I'm Dennis Anderson along with Julie Zenner, and here's what's coming up on Almanac North.
It could be many months before storm damage along Duluth's lakefront can be repaired, and the price tag is growing.
Well, local law enforcement agencies are taking advantage of a miracle drug to save victims of opioid overdoses.
And we'll have the conclusion of a journey of a Duluth man searching for his grandfather who was declared dead during World War II.
These stories and the business news up next on Almanac North. Well, hello again and welcome to Almanac North. Thank you very much for watching. And Julie, we are busy into the summer season and plenty of graduation parties to go around.
That's right. I hear you even have one in your family.
I have one next week coming up, so they're always a lot of fun. All right. Well, our first topic is going to be of interest to anyone who is visiting Duluth this summer.
All right, yes it will, and thanks Denny. Violent storms last fall and this spring wreaked havoc on the Duluth shoreline, and full repairs are likely many months away. The entire extent of damage caused by the storms is being uncovered by an engineering firm surveying both underwater and with aerial drones. And before the work can commence, federal and state agencies will have to approve the city's plans. Here to talk about the lakeshore damage is LeBeau, Construction and Energy Project Supervisor for the City of Duluth. And welcome. Thanks for being here. It sounds like you're going to have a very busy summer ahead of you as you try to get a grasp of the damage along the Lakewalk.
That's correct. It's a long process just to assess the damage and do the design work and get all the necessary permits.
For people who have not been down there this spring, summer yet, how extensive is the damage that still exists on the Lakewalk right now?
I think what most people see is the damage to the Lakewalk itself, but the bulk of the damage and the repairs that we have to do is really underwater or at the edge of the water. So the Lakewalk and the other amenities that are built along it are built along a man-made shoreline, really, and that's a big task to create a shoreline that can resist the forces of the lake. So these storms and previous storms rearranged a lot of that underpinning that holds things in place. So the damage, the visible damage, is quite extensive. Along Canal Park, behind Fitger's, and on up the shore, there were some places where it's very dramatic and blocked off in spots. The whole Lakewalk is open for traffic, for foot traffic right now, but there are some detours around some of the worst areas.
Had much, Mike, or all of the damage been repaired from last fall's storm before this spring storm hit?
No, really none of the damage had been repaired. It was cleaned up. Some of the boardwalk pieces were put back into place, but only temporarily. Winter came right after that storm, and things started to freeze up. We got snow and heavy weather. So it was just starting to thaw and open up again when the April storms hit.
Sure.
And
some of our viewers might be asking, Mike, how prone is the Lakewalk to future storms? I mean, you can't predict what's going to be happening a year from now, 15 years from now. Will the Lakewalk be built in a different manner to protect it from future storms?
As much as possible, that is correct. The bulk of the funding for the reconstruction is coming from government assistance from the state and with a match from the city. That is based on reconstructing what was there, which what we learned is what failed, what didn't work. So I am intent on learning from those experiences, what we learned about that, and the design team that we have in place is very skilled in creating resilient structures that are better suited to withstand those forces.
Good to hear.
You know, the lake was high when the storms hit, and that's cyclical. But the storm frequency seems to be increasing, and the water levels, if that coincides with high water levels, then we're in trouble.
Now the outside consulting firm has estimated that it could be upwards of $9 million to reconstruct, redesign, and reconstruct. Did that number surprise you at all, or as the details have been coming in, was that pretty much what you were expecting?
We had 48 hours to come up with quick assessments to apply for state funding, and some of the damage was discovered along the way and after that process. Once we got consultants in place, they came in and did a more careful survey, and so we expected it to be more, not quite that much, but construction costs keep going up, and their costs are based on doing it better also, and so we plan to do that as much as possible. Have
the regulatory restrictions changed at all along the waterfront in terms of what you can construct or how you can construct that would be different from when the Lakewalk was initially built?
There aren't really building codes for that kind of construction. There are best practices from an engineering standpoint. What has changed is when we have to get permits. For instance, the DNR now considers that anything that gets into the water needs to be permitted from their standpoint, but not just in the current lake level. They because of the surge that they've experienced over and over along the lake, in some places on the lake side of things, they consider that to be around 8 feet above the normal water level. So anything we do in that zone needs that special permitting.
So state and federal organizations or offices need to give final approval to any plan.
Correct. Correct.
Is there any idea, Mike, as to how many people use the Lakewalk in any given day? I mean, this is a popular tourist attraction.
I'm sure there is, but I'm not fluent in that number.
Yeah, and to kind of follow up on that, what does the Lakewalk mean for the city of Duluth?
Well, it's clearly a key focal point for the residents and for tourists. And that's one of our challenges in doing any work down there. It's, as you saw during the storms, it was crawling with people. The lake is such a draw, and even in its violence. So we're going to have to work around that and to keep people safe. And part of the need for more resilient designs is just to make it safer too. If people are going to be there when the weather can change like that, and the draw is such that we need to make it so that big pieces of stuff aren't flying around when the wind blows.
I imagine that having that constant flow of people through there during the summer, which is construction season generally, also presents some challenges for you. How are you going to manage the people that want to be down there against the needs of keeping the construction zone safe?
Well, it's certainly on our radar to integrate that. There are different sections and different conditions and different access. The stretch along Canal Park, the hotel zone there, that's has more options. There are 3 paths along there that we can segregate for public use during construction. As we get around the corner of the lake up towards Fitkers, it gets very narrow and much more complicated, and we're probably going to have to detour foot traffic around some of that during construction. It's hard. It's very difficult just to get equipment and materials in there, let alone.
So, Mike, what do you expect to get done this summer? Is this going to be a period mostly of planning and design rather than building?
Yes, we have permission to fix dangerous emergency spots before the permits are all in place. What places will qualify for that designation isn't clear yet. But it's going to take at least 3 months and maybe up to 6 months to get all the permits in place. And so we're kind of falling behind on this building season. My goal is to get the heavy duty work done this fall.
What's your main consideration or your main considerations as you look to redesign and rebuild the Lakewalk?
What survived well in the Canal Park area was the asphalt walkway. It just was out of harm's way. It sunk into the ground essentially. It's flush. The boardwalk was raised up and that got flipped around. So we're paying attention to that and probably going to create something to kind of shelter the boardwalk sections from those forces. The main thing though is really the damage is the shoreline. The boardwalk got damaged because the shoreline failed. So the way that those that armoring stone is pieced together is not just dumping it in. It needs to be really placed and sized properly. So that's key to making it stay together.
Sounds like we learn by experience.
And then we forget.
Well,
Well, I hope that people remember and think about all the work that you guys are doing down there to get it done. Thank you so much for coming in
Thanks,
and sharing
Mike.
some
Appreciate
information.
it.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
opioid overdoses continue to rise in Minnesota. In 2016, nearly 400 Minnesotans died of an opioid overdose. Law enforcement officers see the impact of opioids on a daily basis. 2 years ago, Duluth police began carrying an antidote that can counteract the effects of an opioid overdose. And this year, Minnesota State Troopers have all begun carrying the antidote Narcan with them in an effort to save lives. This week, Almanac North producer Greg Grell interviewed law enforcement officials about the opioid epidemic and the extent of the problem locally.
Nationwide, overdose deaths have surpassed traffic deaths in this country. They're saying 64,000 deaths alone. But in this region, we are disparately high. We have the highest or the second highest overdose death rate in the state for the past 6 years.
With our mission with the State Patrol, obviously we're traffic safety. We also assist the local sheriff's departments, the police departments, the game wardens, all law enforcement agencies in the state of Minnesota. So we're at many different calls. I know just on a routine traffic stop, we've seen an increase, at least in northeast Minnesota, on non-alcohol related DWIs. We're seeing with the methamphetamines, a lot of methamphetamines is being taken from people in a vehicle, for instance. Now with prescription medications that are opioid based, we're seeing a lot more of those too. For instance, somebody might have an illegal, maybe not have a prescription for an oxycodone or an opioid, and that's also illegal. So we've seen an increase in that as well, not only Northeast, but all in the state of Minnesota. So we're coming in contact with more and more illegal narcotics, and especially here in the area, with reading the statistics that, the heroin overdoses and the amount of heroin that's in our area here.
You might have a person that has back pain and gets prescribed opioids, and they might get 90 days of pills. And for some people, a percentage out there that's more than that they need, and they end up having a problem with it. And once that prescription lapses and they can't get the pills from the doctor anymore, well, it's a natural selection for them to go to something else, and street drugs or opioids just as well as the prescription pill that they get. I think we're doing a better job of educating the public. We're getting the word out there that pain pills are needed. Okay, don't get me wrong, they're needed, but you need the education of what they can do to you and the amount that you use. And they're saying that in the statistics, once you go over 5 to 7 days of using these drugs, the increase of a problem, of a person having a problem with the opioids increases incrementally. And there actually is legislation that they're looking to introduce that would limit the amount of doses that a person would be able to receive.
So this is the kit that every state trooper in Minnesota now is carrying in their squad car, and Narcan's just another name for naloxone. And each trooper is issued 2 nasal sprays, and like I said, we carry these in our squad cars. In the event that we need to use these, obviously they're going to be readily available for us. We had some training when it came to getting Narcan when it was issued in January, and what the professionals are seeing, other police departments, the sheriff's departments, what they're seeing on the streets, and how they're bringing people back, how they're saving lives with Narcan. Also want to touch on with Narcan too is it's a nasal spray that we're currently carrying. The troopers were trained on using the nasal spray Narcan in the event that we suspect somebody's in an opioid overdose. When some of the things that we're looking for obviously is shallow or low breathing or no breathing whatsoever. Also, their heartbeat's going to be very low, their blood pressure is going to be very low, and they're basically maybe coming in and out of consciousness. If we happen to see that, and maybe there's no first responders on the scene as far as ambulance goes or medical first responders, troopers are trained to deploy Narcan. And like I said, there's been 3 known deployments in the state of Minnesota currently, and I anticipate that being a lot higher.
So Narcan, what it does is when a person takes an opioid, that molecule attaches to an opioid receptor in your body, in your head. Everybody has them. Your body actually makes its own opioids, okay? So when they get an outside opioid and it attaches to that receptor, if they get too much of it, it'll put you into an overdose reaction, and where you're not breathing anymore and you're in a position where you could die. When the Narcan is introduced, it comes over the blood-brain barrier, and it actually bumps that molecule, that opioid molecule, off of that receptor and claims it, and it'll hold it for about 30 to 60 minutes. So it'll take somebody right out of that overdose. We received 100 kits, 3-dose kits from the Rumler Hope Network. And they've also pledged to replenish those kits once the expiration dates come up in 2 years. So that's a huge cost savings. That's like $50,000 worth of kits that they've donated for this whole region.
If you know of a family member or a friend that's struggling with this, please seek professional help, because we're seeing the increase in people that are dying from heroin overdoses, opioid overdoses, and it's way too high. So I think that's the key, is education and try to get people some help, some professional help, so hopefully they can kick that terrible drug addiction that they might have.
We've had 57 saves since we started in May of 2016 with this program, so we're just over 2 years now. So 57 people that are still here, given a chance to come out of this hole that they're in.
And we'd like you to know that WDSC WRPT is embarking on a special project this year to shine a light on the problem in our region. So look for more coverage in the coming months.
It's time now for the business headlines from the editors at Business North. During a year when the region's Sears, Kmart, Yonkers, and Herberger's stores have closed, the nationwide Ascena retail group is also struggling. The owner of Maurice's, Dress Barn, and Taylor and other retail stores lost more than $1 billion during its 3rd fiscal quarter. Duluth-based Maurice's sales were down 5% from the prior quarter. Ascena's CEO said the recent performance does not represent the company's potential and predicted 4th quarter sales will improve. He added that a cost reduction plan also is proving successful.
Delta Airlines has selected Lake Superior College as an approved partner for training future aviation maintenance technicians. Delta said it foresees continued high demand for well-trained maintenance professionals in the airline industry for many years to come. Lake Superior College was selected along with 48 other programs across the United States. Dan Tresca, director of Lake Superior College's Center for Advanced Aviation, said the partnership with Delta will help open up more career opportunities for area students. It will also promote LSC's aviation program and Duluth as a thriving aviation hub.
A familiar waterfront contractor has decided to call it quits. Marine Tech has closed and owner Ted Smith has retired. The company's specialty was heavy maritime projects such as harbor dredging and mitigation of contaminated sediments. Smith said there were rarely two jobs alike. Rather than sell the firm, he decided to dismantle it, selling all of the company's equipment at auction. According to Smith, key personnel had no problem finding new jobs because they are talented and have skills that are difficult to find. For more on these and other stories, visit businessnorth.com.
If you have a comment on our show, now's the time to call. Dial 218-788-2849 to leave a message, or send an email to almanacnorth@wdsc.org. And you can visit the WDSC website for updates on our program schedule, news about your favorite PBS shows, and upcoming events here at the station. Now, finally tonight, we have the conclusion of a story about a man's effort to find his grandfather, who was declared dead after his plane crashed in Italy near the end of World War II. Here's part 2 of Finding Lauren.
In the aftermath of World War II, the Hintz family was one of thousands who had lost fathers, sons, and brothers.
My grandmother was clearly fiercely proud of her husband, the service he had done and the sacrifice he had made. And so his story, his spirit stayed alive in sharing, having my grandmother share stories about Lauren as a young man. Right around 2000, my mom marched my elderly grandmother Gert down to the Carnegie Library and showed her this neat thing called the internet on the computer. And just to demonstrate, they did a search for P-47s. A P-47 Thunderbolt is the type of aircraft that my grandfather flew. And lo and behold, basically a blog site, a message site for pilots, air crew, other people who were interested in P-47s appeared. And it afforded my mom an opportunity to post a message literally saying, hey, anybody out there know who Lauren E. Hintz was? So after about 12 years of searching, a gentleman in Italy picked up that posting, and he indicated that he had information that he thought could lead us to the crash site. Now, when we got to Italy, we all embarked on a little archaeological adventure of our own and descended on the field several days before the excavation. And under the hot Italian sun, we sat there with little hand tools that we had bought at the local hardware store and picked and kicked around in the soil. And within a matter of minutes, we started finding fragments, aluminum fragments, fragments that had indicative signs of painting that one would expect to find on aircraft material, and even exploded rounds of ammunition.
The next day, the excavation would begin in earnest.
Suddenly, the prospect that we were physically recovering my grandfather took on a very visceral meaning to me. And I honestly had to step back from the excavation and just walk several hundred yards away, and looking at my mom and wondering what she was thinking, and looking at my uncle and wondering what they were thinking all these years later, having not grown up with a father, having never imagined that they would have one day been sitting in a farm field with 3 generations of Lauren's family, ultimately finding the spot where he made the ultimate sacrifice. And so I certainly was proud, but I certainly felt a sense of Lauren's spirit with everybody in that entire situation.
And so, one of our World War II heroes was reunited with his family. Find out more on aircorpsaviation.com/Finding Lauren.
Wow, what a story and what a great conclusion for that family after all these years, Julie.
Certainly brought them some closure. You know, they didn't mention it in the audio in the piece that we just saw, but you did see the video of a dog tag,
Yes.
which actually turned out to be the actual tag for Lauren. So they had confirmation that
Yes,
he had been found
within
and,
the wreckage.
and really some closure for
Yeah,
the family.
it really did. All right, Julie. For Julie and the crew here at WDSC, I'm Dennis Anderson. Have a great weekend. Good night, everybody, and be kind.